Hello, Year 6. This is lesson 9, the last lesson in this writing unit, and it is Thursday, the 11th of February. So just to recap once more, you are going to be writing a letter as the man to your wife or a family member back home as you sit in the trenches after your comrades has died in your arms. Now, remind yourself of the purpose, audience, and form. We are writing to explain. We're going to explain how much we love the person back home. We're also going to explain all the suffering that we are encountering in the trenches in World War I. Your audience is your loved one back at home, and you're doing a letter, and you're doing a letter with flashbacks. So today, what you're going to be doing, come as no surprise, you are going to be writing your third and your fourth paragraph of your letter. But first, before we start, I've given you a bad example, and I want you to improve it. What you notice, quick task. Remember, we do these as morning starters sometimes. I thought I'd give you a little one to get you going, warm you up. So I remember when we met. I remember that you had a green dress, and I remember that I thought it suited you. Do you remember it? Okay, stop the video now. 5 minutes, quickly. What's bad about it? What can we do to improve it? Off you go. So hopefully now you have identified that there is an awful lot of repetition of I remember in that. And there's very little description whatsoever at all. And you've done so much work on description for detail, where you're amplifying a sentence, you're taking a basic sentence and you've expanded it to give detail about the nouns that are in that sentence. So let's have a look and see what we can do to improve it. Now, I've already had a go at this one. This is one that I prepared earlier for you. So I will never forget when we first met. So I've kept the same sentiment here, but I've used I will never forget instead of I remember. Then I've expanded now on the green dress. So I've actually done an adjectival phrase there because I've changed the dress to an emerald green dress. So you were wearing an emerald green dress with little pearl buttons all the way down the front. Now, those of you that can remember your expanded noun phrases, where you have the noun, which is the dress, and you give a description to in the front of the noun, emerald green dress, and then you use a preposition after the noun, you've created an expanded noun phrase. And this is a really good example of one. So you were wearing an emerald green dress with little pearl buttons all the way down the front. Now, I can picture that dress as I'm reading it. So hopefully that's what your description would do when you do your writing. And then I have some sort of little anecdote that I want to throw in to bring the person I'm writing to, because this is a letter, remember, back to me. Emerald green has always been your favorite color, hasn't it? Looking back, not saying I remember, but looking back, I vividly recall how beautiful you were then and how your beauty made you stand out from all the other girls. So I've changed my ending to talk to her and to show my feelings about how I think about her. Now, also what I've got here to help you in this lesson, year 6, and hopefully you'll find this invaluable, is, let me make it a bit bigger so you can see it. Emailed out to you yesterday were some sentence starters that stops you saying, I remember, I remember, I remember. There's some lovely sentence starters here, different ways of saying, I remember. Could you try to use at least 2 of these in your writing, in your letter recount that you're doing? So, moving on. We are into our third paragraph now. That this is a big flashback paragraph when you are looking back in time to a time when you were happy before the war, or a time when you were together with your loved one. Now, you're going to use a flashback phrase to introduce this paragraph, and you're referring to the past, so you're using past tense throughout. And I want you to use your thoughts and feelings to show how much you care for that person that you're writing to at home. And then I want you to finish with a hope. And I'll give you an example here. I hope that this war ends soon and I can be with you once more. So I have got my waggle. Now, for those of you that remember the waggle from when you annotated it on Monday, you'll know that my flashback goes right back to when I first met my wife, when she was a little girl. We were both children. Now, your flashback doesn't have to go right back to when you were a child. It could be when you got married, or it could be your first dance together when you met, or if you're writing to a parent or a sibling, it could be when they taught you to ride a bike or when you made your first steps. But it's just a point in time in the past when you were happy that you feel that you can write a paragraph on. You might want to stop the video and start to think of a time when you could do that if you're not following my example. So I will never forget. So I've started with a flashback to introduce it. I could have used any one of these, but I've decided I will never forget standing in the hallway as my mother introduced you. We were 8 years old and you had just moved to the village. Upon mother's advice, I shyly invited you to come collecting conkers with me. We went out to that huge horse chestnut tree over near Smith's farm. Do you recall it? So I put a rhetorical question in there to bring my reader back to me as well. It was the tallest in the village. Of course, you collected far more than I did. Not only that, you managed to climb to the top of the tree whilst I waited on the ground, collecting the conkers which had already fallen. You were the greatest tree climber I had ever met, and you put me to shame. I knew then you were the girl for me. As we returned home, I don't know whether you remember, but I slipped across the field and dropped my entire haul into the brook. What a disaster. As the churning water carried them downstream, you put your hand on my shoulder and told me it was fine. We would just share yours. That is how we have always been. I look after you, and you, my darling, look after me. Oh, how I wish I could be with you now. I long to stroll among the chestnuts in autumn again together. I pray our separation will not be for much longer. Okay, now year 6, what I did to write that is I used my structure strip and made sure that I followed it. I also used my checklist to make sure that I had got a range of the things that I had decided I wanted to use within this sentence. So I know that I've used a relative clause. I know that I've varied my sentence starters. I know I've got a range of sentences types within there. I've used a range of description within there, and I've used a range of punctuation. So I've started, as I've already said, I'll never forget, with a flashback, and then I talk about my thoughts and my feelings, and I ask rhetorical questions because although this is a letter and it's going home, I want my partner to feel part of what I'm writing. So year 6, my challenge to you now is to actually create your own piece of writing for paragraph 3. You can, if you choose to, mimic and change mine, or you can create your own paragraph based on when you have decided you're going to flash back to, what period of time you're going to go back to when you were happy. So I suggest that you stop the video here, have a look at my waggle, use the structure strip to help you, use the sentence starters that I've emailed out, and make sure that you have your checklist in front of you and you're ticking it off as you go. When you've finished writing your paragraph, year 6, please feel free. Oh, don't want to do that one, do I? Please feel free to move the video on to the next lesson, next part of the lesson. So year 6. Hopefully now you have finished your 3rd paragraph. What I need you to do now is to go back and read through it all and make sure that you've edited editing 1. That goes without question that you should be doing that as you go, really. And then editing 2. Is there anything you want to add, anything you want to take away and replace it with? And are you reading it out loud to see that it all makes sense and that you're happy with it? So now year 6, we need to move on to our final paragraph, paragraph 4, which is a short paragraph. It's just a little thing that you sign off with. So this is a short paragraph. Use the structure strip to help you. And all you're doing in this paragraph is showing affection to the person at home and say how much you miss them. You are writing now, so this one is present tense. And ask them to remember you. Now, I miss you so much, my sweetheart. I hope that soon we can bid farewell to this hellish country and return home. Light a candle at bedtime and think of me, for I will be thinking of you. My heart is yours forever. Edward. Okay, so what you could do, year 6 here, is mimic the structure again, but come up with your own words that you want to use. So let me give you an example of how I would like to do this. So I've got a short sentence here, and this is what the shape mimics. Let me just reduce the type size down so I know that I can fit into here. Okay, to expand it out a bit. Right, I'm going to say, I wish we were together. So I've kept the structure together. So I've kept the structure of that first sentence. I wish we were together, comma, there's a comma, and then a term of endearment afterwards. Okay. So now, let's look at the next one. This is a longer one and more complex. So instead of I hope that soon we can bid farewell, I'm going to start with dream of leaving this God-forsaken. God-forsaken is all one word, I believe, but I just need to check that. God-forsaken. It doesn't look right. I might put a dot on that and check it. God-forsaken country. And then I'm going to use that and. I dream it and. So that replaces that one. So now here, I need to think of a phrase, comma, which is that one, and then another, a phrase, a clause, sorry, a comma, and then another clause. So I'm going to say here, stretch this out, every morning, let's look at our wedding. Now what I've done, instead of a comma, some spacing in here, instead of a comma here, I've used and. So I'm taking out that comma. So every morning, let's look at our wedding photograph and think of each other. Full stop. Then all that remains now is for me to actually do this last one here, which is what I'm going to just type it here. The last paragraph, and I'm going to say, I miss so much. I miss you so much, my love. Then sign off. So I've followed that structure, changed it slightly because I wanted to change it here and use that noun instead of a comma, but I've just signed off. It's a very short paragraph. So when you have done that, year 6, I would like you to edit your work, go back and read it all the way through. Make sure for one last time that you have included everything that's on your grammar list that you wanted to include and your checklist. And then when you have done that, I would like you to green and pink your work. Now, again, I've started you off. If this helps you, if it doesn't, do it in your own format. But I said, I feel that I have shown my wife how much I care for her by using, what have I done to show my wife how I care? And how we suffered by using, what have I done? You could even give me an example from your text. If I had included something, then I feel it would have helped too. So tell me what you could have done in your piece of writing that you feel, looking back and reading it now, you would have improved it. And when you have done that, year 6, and you're happy with your piece of writing, you are finished. And all that remains for you to do is to submit it to your class teacher at the end of the day. Thank you, year 6.